The couple from London. They arrived in the village on a fog-soaked evening, their black cab whispering away down the empty lane. The woman had lips as red as spilled wine, her smile lingering too long on anyone who met her gaze. The man, tall and sharp-featured, dressed in a tailored suit that looked centuries out of place, carried only a silver-tipped cane. Together, they radiated a charm that made even the most cautious souls lean closer. No one asked where they came from. When the innkeeper offered them a room, she felt her words pulled from her throat before she could even protest that they had no luggage. The man kissed her hand. His lips were cold as stone. At the tavern that night, the pair drank nothing, yet every patron swore the couple's glasses were always full. They listened to old stories by the fire, their eyes glinting in the shifting light. And whenever someone laughed, the sound seemed to die in their throats, replaced by an uneasy silence. Whispers spread quickly. No one had seen them sleep. They were never at breakfast, never at the market. They walked only at night, hand in hand, beneath the gas lamps, their reflections faint, blurred, almost insubstantial. The first to vanish was a butcher's boy. He'd been seen lingering by the woman, his cheeks pink with infatuation. In the morning, only his apron remained, folded neatly on the cobblestones outside the church. A week later, the vicar's daughter disappeared, her crucifix left swinging from the chapel door. Still, no one dared confront them. Fear and fascination bound the villagers in silence. It was Mrs. Whitfield, the baker, who finally told the truth. She swore she saw them at the graveyard just before dawn, their faces shifting, stretching, cheekbones sharp as blades, mouths splitting too wide, eyes glowing a hungry crimson. The woman's laugh echoed like shattered glass as she dragged something writhing from the soil. The man, expressionless, fed it pieces of himself, his pale flesh knitting whole again as though nothing had been lost. When Mrs. Whitfield tried to tell the constable, her shop burned to the ground that very night. Her charred body was never found. Now, each evening, the fog grows thicker. Doors lock sooner, shutters slam faster. But always, the couple walks through the streets, hand in hand, dressed immaculately, smiling with perfect politeness. They leave no footprints. They never age. And yet, the village remains helplessly enthralled. For when they look into those faces, beautiful, terrible, ageless, they see everything they've ever secretly desired. The couple from London never asked for permission. They are only waiting for the next invitation. And someone, inevitably, always, gives it. The Nannies of Blackthorn Manor. The old Blackthorn Manor loomed at the edge of London, its windows darkened with soot, ivy strangling its stone walls. Locals whispered about the nannies, two women long deceased, who had once cared for the children of the estate. Their names were Margaret and Eliza, but no one dared speak them aloud at night. The story went that the children under their charge had vanished, one by one. No bodies were ever found, only faint chalk drawings smeared across the nursery walls, tiny handprints that could never be scrubbed away. The parents fled, abandoning the manor, leaving the nannies behind, or so they thought. It was said the women never left. Now, those brave enough to step inside claim the manor groans with a strange life. In the dust-coated hallways, soft lullabies drift through the air, carried by voices cracked and hollow. The songs grow louder near the nursery, where 2 cribs still stand, rocking on their own. Sometimes the intruder will hear slippers scuffling the floorboards above, though the stairwell has long since collapsed. Sometimes they will hear gentle knocking on the bedroom doors, as though someone is checking in on sleeping children. And sometimes, if they stay too long, they will see them. Margaret, tall and severe, her eyes black pits that swallow the candlelight. Eliza, softer, smiling faintly, though her lips are gray and cracked as old paper. They come in pairs, always together, just as they were in life. Visitors speak of a strange compulsion that overcomes them when the nannies appear. A heavy maternal weight presses down, urging them to obey, to return to the nursery, to lie in the tiny beds waiting there. Those who resist are met with cold hands on their shoulders, a lullaby crooned into their ear until their mind goes soft, until their body moves without their will. One boy, a squatter who vanished in the winter of '86, was later found wandering the streets miles away. His hair had turned white, his fingernails bitten to the quick. He spoke only one thing before falling silent forever. They tucked me in. No one knows what the nannies want. Do they seek the lost children of the house? Do they wish to replace them? Or are they cursed to tend the nursery for eternity, their love twisted into something vile? At night, when the fog curls around the manor's towers and the city is silent, you might glimpse lights in the windows, 2 figures moving slowly, side by side, cradling something invisible in their arms. The neighbors know to look away, because if the nannies catch you watching, they'll decide you're awake past bedtime, and they'll come, soft-footed, smiling, whispering for you to hush. And then they'll tuck you in. Blood in the fog. The fog rolled thick over the Thames, muffling the gas lamps into smudges of gold. At the edge of Whitechapel, 3 figures glided through the mist, their silhouettes elongated and thin as shadows. A woman led them, dark hair trailing down her shoulders, lips red as arterial bloom. The 2 men followed, their eyes catching every flicker of lantern light, gleaming like hunted animals. They walked not with haste, but with hunger. London was their banquet hall. Cobblestones, slick with rain, echoed the faint tap of their boots, and every echo seemed to hush the alleys. Rats stilled, dogs whimpered, and the doors bolted tight. The city had learned to fear them, though it whispered their existence only in hushed taverns. The three pale phantoms who left bodies drained and empty as discarded wineskins. Tonight, they sought revelry. A drunken voice stumbled from the shadows, a man reeling from gin. He tipped his hat clumsily at the woman. "Evening, my lady. How are you tonight?" Her smile unfurled slowly, tender and cruel. She stepped close, the perfume of smoke and iron following her. "Evening," she whispered, her breath cool against his cheek. The men moved in silence, blocking the narrow way. The drunkard's grin faltered as he saw their eyes, gold, hungry, inhuman. He tried to turn, but her hands were already on him, delicate as a lover's touch, pulling him near. His cry never made it beyond her kiss. Blood painted her lips. She licked it away, eyes alight, as her companions drank deeply from the ruin at her feet. The city shifted around them, unaware or unwilling to see. A carriage rattled by, its driver glancing only once before looking away quickly. London was crowded, yet lonely enough for monsters to walk unseen. They left the drained body crumpled by a lamppost, eyes wide in frozen horror. The woman dabbed at her mouth with a lace glove, smearing crimson into fabric. "Too easy," she sighed, though satisfaction lingered in her tone. "Plenty more," one of the men rasped, teeth gleaming like daggers. The other tilted his head toward the sound of laughter spilling from a music hall down the lane. "Shall we?" Their smiles widened, and together they drifted toward the sound of life and warmth, their hunger endless, their beauty a lure too sharp to resist. The fog swallowed them whole, leaving behind silence, the stench of iron, and the sense that London itself was being bled dry. Because the truth was simple, whispered in alleys and printed in no paper. The city did not belong to its people. It belonged to them. The Hooded One. London's fog lay thick upon the cobblestone streets, swallowing sound and light alike. Gas lamps burned dim halos in the mist, but they did little to ease the unease that clung to the night. He was out there. They called him the Hooded One. A long black coat dragged at his boots, its hem damp with filth, and a hood shadowed his face so completely that no one alive could say they had seen it. Those who claimed to had not lived long enough to tell the tale twice. Mary Foster hurried along Bishopsgate, her heels striking sharp against the stones. She pulled her shawl close, her breath pale in the air. She knew the rules, whispered in alehouses and church steps alike. Never walk alone. Never stop when you hear him behind you. And above all, never look back. The first sound came soft, almost polite. Footsteps, perfectly in time with hers. Mary's heart hammered. She quickened her pace. So did he. The fog thickened, pressing in like a damp wall. She could feel him closing the distance without ever seeing him. The scrape of a boot, the slow, steady rhythm. Her throat burned with a need to scream, but she knew it would do no good. The hooded one did not fear the watchman. He did not flee. He simply vanished when he wished, as though the fog itself carried him away. A lantern flickered in the window of a shuttered bakery. She thought of pounding on the door, begging to be let inside, but the rules said to never stop, and so she ran. The footsteps changed. They no longer matched hers. They circled, echoed, came from everywhere at once. Mary's eyes stung with tears. She turned down a narrow alley, cobblestones slick with rainwater. The passage ended in a brick wall. Trapped. The air grew cold. She could hear his coat whispering across the stones before she saw him. A tall figure, draped in black, hood low over a void where a face should have been. In his gloved hand glinted the faintest flash of steel. Mary pressed herself against the wall, shaking her head, whispering prayers through trembling lips. The hooded one did not speak. He simply raised a finger to where his lips might have been, a gesture of silence. The last sound she heard was the soft slice of the blade, quick and deliberate, swallowed by the fog. By dawn, the watchman found only her blood smeared across the cobblestones, a dark trail leading nowhere. The hooded one was already gone, already waiting for the next set of footsteps to follow. Professor Ravenscroft meets the Prowler. Back on the grounds of Hearst University, Professor Ravenscroft is curating the recent finds from Greece for the museum. And what items they are. Literal droppings from the gods. These are the most impressive findings to date for Professor Ravenscroft. Might we even say the find of the century? Some scholars and articles seem to think so. Even as he finishes putting the Greek expedition items away, his thoughts quickly turn to the next adventure. He has a date with the Prowler. After finishing up at the museum, the professor retired to his office to look over the details and items inside the parcel pertaining to the upcoming Prowler expedition. Inside the parcel contained a journal, recently discovered in the attic of an old tenement building in the bowels of the West End of foggy old London. The journal was found in an old chest with other personal effects belonging to a long-since-dead resident, James Buckholter. This man is of significance because he was the carriage driver for the Prowler himself. Not only that, he also delivered the letters written by his murderous master to the papers and carried out any nefarious needs that needed tended to. He was a loyal servant to one of the most brutal serial killers in all of human history. However, that was until his employer no longer thought his services were required, and James was disposed of, becoming just another victim of the Prowler. Little did the Prowler know, James had been keeping a journal while assisting in his murderous, macabre journey, and inside said journal details the location of the secret room hidden within the chamber of Lord Burlington, aka the Prowler, a room no one has ever been inside of, except for the Prowler himself, a room that is believed to hold many rare pieces of the occult. Exciting times lay ahead. Professor Ravenscroft quickly began the assemblage of a team to assist him on this expedition. None would accept the challenge, however, except for two wet-behind-the-ears graduate assistants. They hopped on a plane with gear and necessities in tow and were in London the very next day. Next stop was Burlington Manor. This expedition would be different from the rest, however. Stealth and cunning would have to be carried out by Professor Ravenscroft and his team. They're not going to some abandoned cave or some long-forgotten chamber in some dilapidated building somewhere lost to time. No, they are about to enter Burlington Manor, which is one of the finest dwellings in the realm, belonging to still one of the most important and powerful families in the peerage. The manor is still in operation, serving as the family's summer estate, and therefore is well guarded and fully staffed. Professor Ravenscroft, being the best at what he does, already knew this and scheduled everything accordingly. We are in the winter months now, and the manor has a skeletal staff. The team will need to practice stealthiness and covertness to achieve its goal, however. It was midnight when the team arrived just outside the grounds of Burlington Manor, surveying the situation from atop a hill. Professor Ravenscroft took one last look at the map of the grounds and the architectural floor plans of the manor, and when the coast was clear, they made their way down. They used the cover of darkness to slip past the old night watchman and made their way to the lattice hanging against the wall of the west end of the manor. Then they carefully scaled the lattice up to the bedroom window that once belonged to Lord Burlington. After Professor Ravenscroft jostled the lock on the window, they quietly snuck inside the room. The room was dark and had the look of abandonment, like it hadn't been used in years. The furniture was covered in sheets, and the thick, musky smell of dust was prevalent in the air. It's as if the manor, or the people of the manor, were trying to forget this room, or trying to escape it. Ravenscroft pulled a box of matches from his satchel, along with a small lantern, and lit it. He raised the lantern above his head and examined the walls. He was looking for a candelabra next to a bookcase. The instructions in James' journal say that with one pull of the candelabra, a panel in the wall will slide open, revealing the Prowler's secret room. He searched but for a moment when he spotted the candelabra, pulling it down towards him promptly. As he did this, the panel slowly slid open, stopping for a moment, but continuing not long after, slowed by years of rust, no doubt. The rumors were true, and the journal was correct. The room was there, the secrets and the rare items of the occult, belonging to one of the most notorious serial killers in history, were waiting to be had, just beyond the darkness. Professor Ravenscroft stood there for a moment, collecting his thoughts and preparing himself for what waited in the darkness of the secret room. One of the members of his team, filled with youth and inexperience, could no longer wait, however, and rushed into the room, with the other team member and Professor Ravenscroft close behind. As they did this, They set off a tripwire, closing the panel on the wall behind them and releasing a noxious gas inside the secret room. Professor Ravenscroft knew what the young member of his team had just done could be deadly and was sure to be disastrous. The mysterious gas lingered in the air, suffocating Ravenscroft and his team. The professor raised his lantern, trying to find anything in the room that could help he and his team either escape or disperse of the horrible gas. He shined his lantern in the far back corner of the room, revealing a sealed glass coffin, which was common in Victorian times. As the professor stepped towards the coffin, he heard a click from the floorboard beneath his feet. He was afraid he had triggered a booby trap. Instead, it caused a metal hole to slide open on top of the coffin. As it did this, instantly the toxic cloud of gas began to pour into the hole, like it was being sucked inside by a powerful force. Once every ounce of the suffocating fog was sucked up, the hole in the coffin slid shut, and an eerie silence filled the room. Professor Ravenscroft was uneasy and on guard. He knew whatever the gas was could not be good, but he and his team had a job to do, and it was time to start doing it. The team pulled out several candles and lanterns to illuminate the room, then began looking for the items on their list. Fascinating things sat before them, things Professor Ravenscroft wasn't even expecting. There was a large desk up against the center wall of the room, and the entire room was surrounded by bookcases. The team tackled the bookcases first, pulling out only the most rarest of occult books. They found an ancient book on witchcraft, spells and incantations, wrapped in the skin of a Salem executioner. They also found several books on demonology and summoning the dead, ancient texts written in blood of the condemned. Professor Ravenscroft, however, found the unholiest of holies, the number one item on the list. He found one of the Book of the Three, a book believed to be written by the sludgy hand of the unholy demon of shit himself, Stoolzabub. Professor Ravenscroft's hands trembled as he held the book, knowing the magnitude of such a find. The book was ancient, and he handled it with care. The book is very delicate, believed to be bound in the used toilet paper of the condemned, used by the most evil of anuses known to man. The professor also noticed the book gave off an aroma of stale nuts and musty butts. Some have called the scent, who are familiar with and have experienced it, the old familiar, a smell that causes one to contemplate their life's choices. The professor, however, had no time for contemplation. He had an entire room to catalog. He carefully sat the book of the unruly stool down on the desk, but as he did this, a metal container caught his eye. He reached for it and wiped away the decades' worth of dust that was covering the top of it. As he did this, he realized the cover of the box was glass, and after the dust was wiped away and the contents of the box were revealed, the professor fell down in amazement. Thankfully, the desk chair was there to catch his fall. In the box sat a brown candle, the receptor, the most important item needed to bring forth the unholy Lord of Shit. The professor was astonished. He had never seen one up close, never held one, and this one was beautiful. It had a color of alabaster brown, and it had carvings engraved on the sides of a gentleman in a top hat and cloak. It looks to be of the Prowler himself. But what makes this candle even more special and more of an important find. It's been used, meaning the Prowler was actually able to summon the demon of shit himself. Professor Ravenscroft couldn't believe his eyes, couldn't believe the important find he was holding. Holy shit, he thought. He tried to redirect his thoughts to the rest of the room, and as he did this, he noticed a top hat and cloak displayed on the bookcase across the room. He got up from his seat and went to the bookcase, and upon inspection, he also noticed a pair of white gloves and another metal glass case that held a long, polished surgical knife. My God, it's the Prowler's murder kit, he thought. What magnificence is this? The bookcase was next to the glass coffin that the gas had been sucked into earlier. The professor's hip nudged it while he was examining the Prowler's items. He looked down and thought he could make out the lining of a body, but the brown-green gas trapped inside the coffin was obstructing his view. He gave a quick momentary thought of this being the first expedition of not having to fight off some ancient ass demon or god, and was thankful for it, then went back to examining the items. Once again, however, the professor should have known better. His peaceful thoughts are about to betray him. While he was lost in his excitement, one of his greenhorn graduate assistants sat down at the desk behind him and picked up the book of the stool. He began to read aloud from the book, but the light was beginning to darken around him, and be it naivete or complete and utter stupidness, he lit the brown candle that was sitting on the desk. The professor, in his excitement, only noticed when his nostrils were hit from the sour, nutty aroma from the burning candle. He knew something wasn't right. Then he heard the strange Latin being spoken and quickly turned around. "No, you stupid bastard! You mustn't read from the book! You'll doom us all!" The professor screamed in terror. As he uttered those words of warning, the coffin began to shake and rattle violently, followed by a moan of pain. Whatever was inside was awake. Professor Ravenscroft moved away from the coffin and joined his team, waiting in trepidation for what was to emerge. The professor was kicking himself in the ass for bringing along such novices. Just can't find good help these days, he thought. He still had his protection, however. Even though he thought he would not have to do battle with the forces of evil on this trip, he still always has his holy talisman around his neck. He brought it out and held it in his hand as the moans became louder. The young assistant who read from the book began crying uncontrollably. The professor gave the young man a slap across the cheek and told him to stifle that shit. As he did this, the coffin door flung open, and out rose a Victorian-dressed gentleman. It was him. It was the Prowler. The team looked on in disbelief, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to say. The Prowler spoke. "Ah, looks like my curse worked, gentlemen. You tripped the wire. You unleashed the gas of demonic life, and you read from the book. 1,000 thank yous, I must say. Who are you fine fellows, by the way?" After a few silent moments, Professor Ravenscroft spoke up. "I am the famous archaeologist and explorer, Professor Vincent Ravenscroft, and these are my assistants." "Archaeologist, you say? That was just becoming popular when I met my demise. I was becoming quite fascinated with it myself. You must not be very good, though, seeing that you stumbled in here and resurrected me, one of the most vile creatures that's ever walked the earth," the Prowler said in a laughing, sarcastic tone. "No, I'm quite good, the best in my field, as a matter of fact. And if it wasn't for these amateur shitheels I brought along with me, your old dusty ass would still be asleep in your fancy-ass coffin," the professor responded in a stern, defensive tone. The Prowler smiled and said, "Quite charming," then stepped out of the coffin and walked about the room, stopping by the bookcase that displayed his items. "Ah, my belongings. It's been so long since I've looked the part of a proper gentleman and felt the grip of my blade. Such beauty in death. Am I right, Professor? I must say, Ravenscroft, if you know who I am, if you're so acutely aware of my exploits, then what makes you think you can speak to me in the fashion of disrespect?" the Prowler said menacingly. Professor Ravenscroft held out his talisman and told the Prowler that he could do him no harm. "I am protected by my holy talisman. I will take the rare items I came here for, and I will banish you back to whatever hell you came from," the professor said sternly. The Prowler once again smiled and informed the professor he was not going anywhere. "I'm back, and I'm back for good. I'm no mere demon you can send back to hell with a simple incantation. I'm a vengeful spirit seeking his revenge," he said in an increasingly menacing tone. He continued as he slowly started to don his Prowler attire. "My items that you're here to collect, more like steal from me, are also not going anywhere. Now look upon me, look upon death, with which I hold in my hand, and pray to whatever gods you pray to, for you are about to die," he screamed as he raised the blade above his head, dispatching of the first assistant. The second assistant tried lunging at the Prowler, attacking him with a candlestick, but was met with a blade to the top of the skull. As the Prowler struggled to pull his blade out, Professor Ravenscroft slid the book of the stool into his satchel and attacked the Prowler with his talisman. The two men struggled. The Prowler was finally able to pull out his blade from the assistant's skull, and when he did, he cut Professor Ravenscroft across the arm and hit him over the head with the butt of his blade, knocking him unconscious. To the Prowler's dismay, however, he could not kill Ravenscroft because of the protection of his holy talisman. He instead removed the professor from the manor and left him lying in some ditch miles away. The professor woke up hours later, thankful to be alive. As he sat there collecting his thoughts, trying to clear the cobwebs and grogginess away, he reached into his satchel and realized he had the book of the stool. Even in defeat, Professor Ravenscroft finds ways to be on top. This time is different, however. There's an evil that's been unleashed, and he'll be seeking revenge, seeking to recover what belongs to him. It's a new dawn, ladies and gentlemen, a fear that hasn't been felt in decades. The merchant of death is here. The collector of souls is once again roaming the streets. The Prowler has returned. The Black Procession. The old manor crouched at the edge of the moor, like a beast waiting to pounce. Its windows hollow sockets, its roof sagging beneath centuries of damp. No one lived there, not anymore. The village children whispered that after sundown, the fog rolled in from the marshes, not by nature's will, but by invitation. Thomas, a drunk with more bravado than sense, wagered one autumn evening that he would walk to the manor at night and bring back a stone from its cracked courtyard. The pub crowd roared approval, and with a lantern swaying in his hand, he staggered into the mist. The closer he drew, the thicker the fog became, clinging to his clothes, muffling his footsteps. By the time the manor loomed out of the whiteness, he could barely see the crumbling gates. Still, he pressed forward, chuckling at his own courage. Then the air shifted. From the edge of the fog, shadows detached themselves, tall and thin. They wore black robes that brushed the ground, their hoods deep and faceless. One, then another, then dozens, silently emerging, encircling the manor like mourners at a grave. Thomas froze, his breath catching. He tried to lift his lantern higher, but the flame sputtered and died, smothered by the damp air. In the sudden darkness, he heard them move, not footsteps, but the whisper of fabric over stone. The procession walked the perimeter of the manor, endlessly circling, their heads bent as if in prayer. A low hum rose from them, a dirge-like moan that seemed to vibrate in his bones. Thomas staggered back, fumbling for the gate, but the fog warped space. Every direction led him deeper into the ring of black-robed figures. His pulse thundered in his ears. One figure turned, its hood tilted toward him. Within the shadow, he saw no face, only endless darkness, as if staring into the grave itself. A hand, skeletal and pale, reached out. The moment it brushed his shoulder, the cold pierced deeper than winter. His scream echoed once, swallowed by the fog, and then silence fell. When the villagers went searching the next morning, they found only his lantern, its glass frosted from within. The stone he had promised to bring lay beside it, slick with something dark that no one dared to touch. From then on, the children no longer dared even whisper about the manor. The fog still came at night, heavy and unnatural, and if you stood too close to the moor, you could see them, the Black Procession, gliding through the mist, forever circling the crumbling house. They say each time a fool enters the fog, another hooded figure joins the line, and the circle grows tighter. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.